Hello, heroes of Azeroth. I'm your host, and this is the Warcraft News Network. I'm here to talk to you about all things WoW all the time, with, of course, the pre-patch being announced. We now have the best opportunity to kind of give a review on Dragonflight. But I figured, why only review Dragonflight? Why not review the other expansions as well? And I could make 30-minute videos going over all the pros and cons of every expansion from vanilla to even the War Within. However, I figured that is a huge fucking waste of time. And, of course, it would be easier and faster and more entertaining to do what everyone and their mother is doing, which is a tier list. So, let's go. Of course, we are going to go from the original to the newest, and I'm going to make a particular reasoning for all of my Dragonflight choices. But we will go with World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft, at the time that it came out, was really good. It's not the best, but it was good compared to what we had at the time, such as things like Rohan Blood Feud. So, of course, vanilla goes good. Then TBC happened. TBC, of course, led to some really good changes, such as Paladins on the Alliance and Shaman on the Horde. Or no, wait, I got that mixed up. They're swapped. Either way, really good. However, due to the attunement quests being absolutely insane, and the heroic dungeons being a little too easy if you had a decent group, and them fucking up some classes. Rip Prot Warriors. We're just gonna leave it at good. Then we go into Wrath of the Lich King. Wrath of the Lich King, of course, had the first hero class. It had flying built in to the leveling experience. You could not hit storm peaks and travel that entire zone unless you had flying mounts. Now, here's the thing about that. It also broke a lot of classes. And it had the first legendary that was not an RNG drop. And it wasn't bad. I'll definitely put it above classic. It's definitely above classic. Then we move on. What was next? Of course, we got Cataclysm. Listen, Cataclysm, I don't care what people say. Cataclysm, aces. Aces. So much better than Wrath of the Lich King. So much better. We got to revisit old zones. Yes, some people are like, but we made the old zones and it's bad. Dude, you get to punch Deathwing in the face in the questing. Listen, it was good. It was. It was good. The rating was extremely unbalanced. However, unlike Wrath of the Lich King, it didn't have 100 different lockout systems before settling on one. Add to that the fact that the classes were probably in the best state that they had been in for a while, and it only took them one tier to figure out, hey, you know what, we can't really make 10 and 25 completely equal, but we're going to try. They did fuck up tier 11, but compared to Trial of the Grand Crusader, I don't think that rating can be that fucked up. The heroics were properly tuned for challenge. A lot of people say, yeah, they're overtuned, they're too difficult. I ran them. They weren't too difficult. You just needed CC and proper fucking DPS. Plus, the spirit beasts that came in Kata were great. So then, let's move on, of course, Miss Pandaria. Miss Pandaria, favorite expansion. Favorite expansion. Not only did it introduce the monk class, which wasn't a hero class, but it introduced the different types of flying mounts, like cloud serpents, where you actually had to train. The story of it was great. It did that faction thing without really leaning too far into it. And the raid content, to this day, remains aces. Yes, it was when LFR came out at launch, but I still remember the, I think it was the forum posts where Ghostcrawler was reacting to some stuff. And one dude said, listen, you need to up the LFR drop rates because my guild cannot progress past 10-man Stone Guards normal. And he's like, no, people have done it before, with less gear. It's actually, you need your tanks to do that. It's a skill issue. No, it's not. We're really good. It's like, no, it's literally a skill issue. People have beaten that boss before you. So, yeah, obviously, Miss Pandaria is the top for me. After Miss Pandaria, we got Warlords of Draenor. Warlords of Draenor, right there in the OK, I take it box. And, of course, people are going to say, how can you have Warlords of Draenor all the way up there? Warlords of Draenor, worst expansion in the game. Actually, it was really good. Not only did monks get access to Chi Explosion, which I fucking loved, but it also allowed us to have really good raids. The raid content was amazing, and the 20-man mythic setup, mwah, chef's kiss, man. The problem was there just wasn't enough content. There wasn't, and it sucked. And there was obviously cut content from what they showed us at BlizzCon. And it sucked. But you know what sucked more? Not Legion. Legion was good. Actually, you know what? I'll say this. Legion, right behind Miss Pandaria. My reason for that is Mythic Plus, Artifact Weapons, Demon Hunter, what else was there? I know there was something else that I loved about Legion. I think it was the class quests. Yeah, it was the class quests. Also, by the way, the mission table was no longer the biggest source of gold. The main reason why Legion is under Mist of Pandaria is very simple. It was a terrible grind fest. It absolutely was. Now, of course, people will be like, yeah, but at the end it was fixed. That's at the end. That's after 2 years. So then, what do we have after? We have Battle for Azeroth. It's an okay, I'll take it expansion. Right. Okay, I'll take it. Why is it okay, I'll take it? Very simple. It had issues. Azerite armor did not make sense. It didn't. The class... No, wait. No. I just remembered. Yep. I forgot. Some classes literally couldn't function, rotationally speaking, without certain Azerite gear. Also, we have to take into account the devs that straight up argued with players on Twitter about why the change to the weekly cache was actually a good thing. Because when it's pointed out, hey, you kind of like completely gimped our gear acquisition, and the developers come out and say, well, we changed this weeks before the testing servers went down, and nobody seemed to complain, so obviously it was a good thing. It's like, but it wasn't. It wasn't, though. Can we be honest with that? It obviously wasn't a good thing because they changed it like 2 months after launch. Not even 2 months. Like the first fucking update, they changed it. They did what is normal, which was, hey, make a thing that allows us to just buy the gear that we want. And corruption. I can't go on them too hard about class balance because let's be honest here, class balance has never been Blizzard's strong suit. Well, then of course we get Shadowlands. Shadowlands is amazing. Well, actually, Shadowlands is shit. Well, it's amazing. Well, it's shit. Well, it's amazing. Well, it's shit. Those are essentially the two extremes. And let me tell you something. It was shit. Now, some people be like, but you're rating it too low. You're rating it too low. No, I'm rating it exactly where it belongs. Covenants were called out in alpha as being a terrible idea. The covenant lock that was on there for literally no reason was a terrible idea. Then, of course, you get them doing stuff where they say, well, if the community doesn't like it, we'll pull the ripcord. And then later saying, well, there's no ripcord. Well, we just want, there to be some friction in player choice. We want meaningful choice. Listen, you guys could have had that. You could have had that if you tied the Covenant choice to be simply cosmetic. And that was pointed out all the time. And then people were like, but if you can freely switch, then you just change it for every boss. And if you don't, then you get kicked from groups. Which, of course, never happened, even after the lock was moved. You know what lock wasn't moved, though? The fucking conduit change. A cooldown on changing your conduit. That remains, to this day, the dumbest thing that was ever placed in the game. Ever. And that is in a game where the Paladins had Blessing of Seasons. Not to mention the absolute disparity between one covenant and the other in terms of updates. The Night Fae got the most changes with anything. It was terrible. So then, of course, we get to the meat and potatoes of it. Sorry, my microphone did die at one point. We get to Dragonflight. Now, Dragonflight's over. Pre-patch is not Dragonflight content. Dragonflight did have a season 4, which means we had everything going, right? We got everything we needed. Problem is, where was it story-wise amongst all of these? Well, obviously the story was better than Battle for Azeroth and better than Shadowlands. Was it better than Warlords of Draenor? Kind of. The cinematics that we had were aces. It was better than TBC. It was better than regular Classic because Classic didn't really have a coherent story. Not as good as Wrath of the Lich King, though, because Wrath of the Lich King built up Arthas and then you actually fought him. We did not fight. We kind of fought Rudicron, but that was in a dungeon, and that wasn't even to the end. He still won. He still got away with what he wanted. Was it better than Cataclysm? Well, not really. It had dragons. It had Alexstrasza, but it didn't have some badass moments like Sunwell. What about Legion? Did it have a better story than Legion? No, it did not. And it didn't have a better story than Miss Pandaria. Even though Miss Pandaria's story was a little disjointed, the reveal of the Klaxi and who they truly serve was amazing. And I don't think anyone will ever be able to say that it wasn't. Gameplay-wise, where does it land? Well, it redid the talents, much like Warlords of Draenor and Miss Pandaria did. It didn't really take anything away, unlike Warlords of Draenor, but it did give us some new stuff. It also had a new class and a new race, even though the only way to play that race was to play that class. And then it even introduced a spec mid-game, which I don't even really know how to feel about. The dungeons in it's perfected Mythic Plus system. That's all I can say. The Mythic Plus system in Dragonflight is perfected. The gear system is perfected. The talent system is a really good system, just poorly implemented. The story is where it's lacking because we don't see dragons as dragons much. We don't get that feeling of dragons, mythical beasts that like conquer everything, you know? So I think that I would have to rate it right below Legion. Right below Legion. Because in Legion, until the very end of the expansion, just like Mist of Pandaria, I played constantly. In Dragonflight, I don't play Season 4. I'm not even aiming for the Mythic Plus mount. Because I don't want to. It doesn't interest me. In an expansion where you introduce dragon riding and PvP and raiding, get skins for dragons. One moment. Sorry about that. One of the things that I hate about being in a city. I lost my train of thought. But you're telling me that a Mythic Plus mount is going to be a shitty ground mount instead of a skin for your dragon? That's stupid. And you know it's stupid. Also, they've introduced a lot of shit in the store. The trading post price increase. I love that the trading post got added. But come on, man. Come on. Come on. You're taking almost a month worth of fucking currency for a transmog set. An armor set. Not even that good of an armor set. Come on. You know better. Class design, class balance. Listen, as a Windwalker monk, I'm pissed. I'm pissed, right? Because I'm seeing what the War Within is doing, and I'm looking and like, you chose to stick us into a way where our spec only really works with bugs, and then you fix those bugs and leave us weaker. Come on. So I'm going to place it, you know what? I'm going to place it here good. I'm going to place it above Kata. Okay, it's not the best, but it's pretty good. Now, of course, we have to talk about the War Within. Why are we talking about the War Within? It hasn't launched. Well, so here's the thing. If I'm going to have to reshuffle some stuff here. Okay, so if we go at launch, and we just go with how stuff was at launch, then we will have to rearrange a few things. You know what? I will place Kata down there because we're don't pay attention to the ranking with the War Within right now. What we're doing is we're looking at everything at launch. Shadowlands, absolutely terrible at launch, right? Absolutely terrible at launch. People are like, yeah, but things were fixed by the end. That's the end. I'm talking at launch. BFA, same thing. Absolutely terrible at launch. Like I said, Kata had rating issues for the entire first fucking tier. The world first kill on Atramedes was obviously not intended to work like that, but they didn't get banned because everyone did it. The first kill on Nefarian was nothing but like a bunch of fucking druids. Like, everything was super unbalanced from the beginning. But, big caveat here, but they nailed heroic dungeons. With their difficulty, they nailed rep, rewards, and overall they were pretty good. Classic, huge fucking grind fest at the beginning. Nobody even knew what raids were for at the beginning. Like, what? Why are we gathering 40 people for this? Then, Warlords of Draenor. Warlords of Draenor at launch was really good. You had a lot of stuff to do to maximize everything. If you're one of the few people that succeeded that 33% chance to get the extra bonus roll in week 1, the raids at launch were aces. Right? Because we had 20-man mythic. We had flex raiding at the beginning. It was sweet, and we had access to Chi Explosion. TBC. First time everyone started off in the same area, so PvP was insane. You constantly had a sense of dread when dealing with the fucking Fell Stomper dudes. The first tier of raiding requiring so much work. Kara, by the way, being a huge lore dump, was great. Miss Pandaria launch, the biggest complaint from Miss Pandaria launch was the rep grind. Because of the limit on how much stuff you could do every day, there was a limit on how much rep you could get, and they got rid of the rep tabards, which I think was the dumbest thing they could have done, but what do I know? I only rated Mythic. Legion. Again, it was just the grind, man. Kind of similar to BFA, with the Azerite grind, except you were also, in this case, rewarded for coming in late. But it was more noticeable in BFA. And in Legion, it was just, listen, grind your fucking weapon. Just grind it. And that's what people did. Like, I myself, I had 2 golden traits by the first raid I went into. Now, a lot of people were also grinding Maw of Souls and kind of fucking up how Mythic Plus was supposed to work. But, you know, Dragonflight. Dragonflight at launch. My friends, I will have to... I can only say one thing about Dragonflight at launch. It was good. It was good. However, it was so annoying. Before they came in with the gear upgrade system and everything, it was really fucking annoying. Super rares were such a big thing. The Rathian grind, just for it to not pay off. But we didn't know that. We were marketed Rathian as being the next big guy. But it never happened. It never happened. It sucked so hard. But it was still fun. It was quite possibly the most fun I had at the beginning of an expansion since Mists of Pandaria. It's not to say I didn't have fun with Legion and figuring out that by jumping and then whirling Dragon Punching, you can actually get your artifact weapon to proc and do a little extra damage. But it was fun. Then we move on to Wrath of the Lich King. Wrath of the Lich King didn't have the same problems that TBC did. You started off on one of 2 sides. And then you eventually worked your way into the center, and you got chased by the big bad the entire time in questing in the dungeons. You constantly saw Arthas as this big threat. And that felt amazing. Now, here's where we need to go. We need to look at what we are getting with the War Within at launch. We know everything we are getting with the War Within at launch. We don't know some story points, we don't know some cinematics, but we know how it's going to work. So we have the hero talents. These things are constantly being adjusted. Add to that the massive rework to a lot of specs. That immediately makes it amazing if you're just looking at that. Well, we have to look at some of the instanced content. Some of the instanced content including delves. Well, if you listen to Bellular Gaming, when delves were first shown and you could only do the first 3 layers, which were for leveling characters, and you go in there with your full gear, your full hero talents, stuff like that, and you blitz through it. Oh my god, it's so boring. There's no special stuff here. It's so boring. Well, then you'd be like, oh, it's just super shit because of the delves. But then, once you actually experience what you're going to when you hit max level, you experience the higher levels, and experience the actual rewards, you're going to say it's pretty good. The Great Vault change, allowing you to unlock stuff through world events. It's good. The PvP, we got a new PvP battleground. Is it amazing? It's okay. It's okay. You know what? Here, I'll take it. Well, what about the hero talents themselves? How do they change up some of the classes? Well, of course, you'll hear about the really fun ones. You'll hear about how you can be Kilth the Sunstrider or summon all of the Riders of the Apocalypse. Amazing. But then you have some of the ones that don't really work too well. You'll take a minute. Like Shadowpan. Shadowpan for Monk. You know what? It's not really something you can control. Meh, it's mid. Well, then you have to look at the fact that they are being extremely responsive on class changes and hero changes. And you know what? That's the best we can hope for. That's the best we can hope for in terms of communication. Then you take into account the dungeons. The dungeons are good. The Mythic Plus pool, not so good. The Mythic Plus changes are the best. Now, of course, you'll hear some people say, well, that's not true. The Mythic Plus changes are terrible. And then you ask them where they got that, and they'll say, I got it by looking at it. I got it because, to my understanding, this is how it works. Even though, if you actually talk to the people that play at really high ends, they're wrong. Because once you get to, I think it's plus 12, every dungeon will play the same. You won't have to worry about, oh, it's a push week if you're pushing keys. Now, of course, little Jimmy, who does a plus 9 every so often, just does it for gear, you know, he's going to say, well, it sucks. It sucks really hard, man. But he's not going to experience those changes. So we can't take him at his word. You know who we can? For the Mythic Plus changes, we can take the people who do Mythic Plus. And we can leave that there at best because compared to every iteration of Mythic Plus that we got at the beginning of an expansion, it's the best. The dungeon pool's not amazing. Mist of Tyr and Scythe is going to be terrible. But it is the best system that we have had at launch. We also have the gear upgrade system in at launch. It's good. We have people doing world content, getting rewarded for it. It's good. What about the raid? So, compare raiding content at launch. From what I have experienced in the first raid, we haven't seen anything on the last boss. What I've experienced, it's right there. It's right there between Emerald Nightmare, which, by the way, amazing raid. People are like, oh, it's done in 3 days. Yeah, it's done in 3 days because they're really good players, and they weren't hamstringing us with fucking one-shot mechanics. Then you get Miss Pandaria. Miss Pandaria's launch raid content was amazing. So it's good. What about the story of it? What about the cohesive story of it? Well, we know who our big bad enemy is. Are they there while we level? No, they're not. But here's the saving grace for that, at least from my perspective. While we do not constantly see Zal, we do see forces of the void, and we are constantly fighting them. And our heroes, our main characters that accompany us, the NPCs that essentially are what the story revolves around, they experience growth. Very similar to Mist of Pandaria growth. So, we can see all of this at launch. Now, of course, some people are going to mention Faerun, and I agree. I agree with Faerun. Listen, they're trying to push her. She's not that interesting of a character. She's not. She's an insert because they had to have someone from Arathi, and they just made a bad choice. So this final ranking is pretty much where I'd place it. Because Mist of Pandaria at launch, they were kind of missing a few things. But their dungeon and raid experience was aces. Their class design was aces. War Within seems to be going that way. We do, of course, have some of the specs that are like, hey, listen, we're not done with the changes. You'll see some in a later patch. And those people being like, why would you do that to me? It's like, hey, this is a Windwalker monk for fucking the last 10 years. Welcome to my world. Sit the fuck down and wait your turn. So this is where it lands. And of course, people are going to be like, oh, well, this was supposed to be a Dragonflight review. I did review Dragonflight. The thing is, the review is much like the expansion. There's not really much to talk about. And then, of course, there's going to be, you have BFA and Shadowlands at the bottom. How are you ranking Shadowlands above BFA? You know what? You're right. Shadowlands shouldn't be above BFA. Shadowlands is behind BFA. Shadowlands is worse because of the Covenant problem, but that's a completely different discussion for another time. Because you see, folks, it's time to polish your shields and sharpen your axes. Because we have reached that moment where I must depart. So with that, I bid you adieu. I'm your host, and this has been the Warcraft News Network. Have a fun time out there, and remember, if you do anything in a delve past layer 8, you're a tryhard.